After surviving a horrific car accident on the outskirts of the city, in which the car crashes in the pouring rain, barely escaping with her life while her twin brother Lucas remains trapped in the wreckage, Lena Carver cannot rid herself of crushing guilt. But the worst part wasn't that feeling, it was what happened next. On the third night after Lucas's burial, Lena woke up in the darkness, her heart pounding wildly, her breath uneven. She felt something in the room, something that wasn't there before. In the far corner where the moonlight faded behind the curtains, something stood. It wasn't entirely human, but it wasn't just a shadow either. A tall, slender figure, as if its body was made of darkness itself. No eyes, no mouth. Just a black void where its features should have been, a hollow abyss that absorbed light and air. She stared, frozen, unable to move or scream. But she didn't need to because the entity moved. Slowly gliding across the room, it drew closer. It saw her. It knew her. And when the wind whispered through the window, she heard a voice that shouldn't have been there, a voice she knew too well, emerging from the black void in place of a mouth. "Lena, why did you leave me there?" It wasn't an illusion. It wasn't just a nightmare. The doctors diagnosed her with post-traumatic stress disorder and prescribed sedatives that weighed down her eyelids, drowning her in a dreamless sleep. But Lena saw the truth, and the truth was staring back at her. The ghosts were no longer confined to the darkness. They no longer waited for her in her bedroom. They had begun to roam around her in broad daylight, in places that were supposed to be safe. In the subway, an old woman sat across from her, her face burned and disfigured as if the flames had devoured her entirely, whispering cryptic words, words that scorched Lena's mind like embers. In the park, she saw him, a child in old, tattered clothes playing with a black ball. But when she approached, she realized it wasn't a ball at all. It was a hardened lump of dried blood. And then came the other one, a man in a torn suit, his footsteps heavy as if his body was filled with stones. He followed her every evening, his eyes empty, his body reeking of rot and death, like a corpse stuffed inside a forgotten wall for years. "They want something," she wrote in her trembling notebook, her handwriting becoming uneven and distorted. "They are staring at me as if I am their gateway." The pages of the notebook were filled with their drawings, distorted faces and meaningless names, Jakob M. and Irina F. They were just words until she decided to investigate them. Every name belonged to a person who had died in a car accident on the same road where Lucas had perished. On a rainy night, she heard a sound coming from Lucas's old phone, which had been turned off since the accident. It was her brother's voice screaming, "You see them too, don't you? Don't trust sleep." Since that night, the ghosts were no longer content with just watching. They began to come closer. The burned old woman no longer appeared only in crowds. She started waiting for her in the mirror, staring from behind the steam while she showered. Her deformed face grinned, a severed smile, as if her skin had melted and shrunk over black, decayed teeth. The child was no longer just a shadow in the garden. He began leaving bloody footprints on the kitchen floor, as if his feet were soaked in a warm, sticky liquid. The metallic scent of blood filled the air, and the footprints led directly to her room. But the worst of all was him. The man in the torn suit no longer just chased her in the streets. He began appearing in her photos. Each time he was closer, his bony limbs more visible, his empty eyes darker, deeper, until that last photo. He was right behind her, his withered hands slowly creeping toward her shoulders, ready to grab her. When she showed the picture to Dr. Wagner, he sat in long silence. Then, with a cold, final voice, as if delivering an irreversible verdict, he said, "You're not imagining them. You're attracting them." The next day, he stopped treating her. He gave no reason, no explanation. But on the wall of his clinic, there were drawings of pale, featureless faces scratched by invisible nails. Beneath them, a phrase was written in the shaky handwriting of a child. "She belongs to us now." By morning, Lena's apartment was empty. The windows were locked. The door was bolted from the inside, but on the mirror, written in cold blood, were the words, "Look where you don't want to see." Under her bed, they found Lucas's phone, open to a recorded message. Lena's trembling voice whispered, "They're here with me. Lucas, too. He says he hates me because I let him die. Now I must serve them. Be their eyes in your world. If you hear this, know that I am not crazy. They are everywhere. They are." The recording ended with a scream, then the laughter of an old man. Today, the residents of the neighborhood warn about Lena's apartment, which remains unrented. Sometimes the neighbors hear footsteps at night or see the shadow of a woman standing behind the window, holding a phone glowing with a pale blue light, while 3 ghosts circle around her, waiting for their next victim. In the city police archives, the case file remains open. The last attached image, a surveillance camera shot of a deserted street, showing Lena running in the middle of the night with 4 shadows behind her, one of whom looks exactly like Lucas.